Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, we have regrets from Councillor Sanju. And Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, there don't seem to be any. Could we have a mover and seconder to resolve into Committee of the Whole? Councillor Knoll and Councillor Grant, thank you for that. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there is no objection, and that motion carries. All right, Council, would one of you like to move the consent agenda items? Councillor Lischina, thank you. Are there any questions about the consent items? All right, I'll ask a vote then. Councillor Adams, is that you with a question about a consent item? Please ask your question.
Well, my apologies. I meant to ask about not item 3, but about the public hearing item.
So item number 4 is your concern?
That's correct.
All right then. Any objection to the consent items? Madam Clerk, there is none. The consent items are adopted. That brings us to the public hearing item for tonight. This is the main event tonight. This is the public meeting report for the draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for Mattamy or Joshua Creek Limited, Phase 3, part of lots 8 and 9, and this is in Ward 6, unless I misperceive the councillor's interest. If anyone watching the live stream of this meeting on oakville.ca wants to speak to this item, please call 905-815-6095, and the operators will connect you with the meeting, and you'll be called upon to speak following the registered delegations. And Council, we have a presentation by Lee Musson, our senior planner, and we have no registered delegations at this moment except for a planning consultant for the applicant who's available for questions. And Madam Clerk, if you can bring Lee Musson, I see her. Lee, welcome. Council looks forward to your presentation, which will help the public understand what we're talking about. And you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Burton, members of Council. This evening you can find my staff report on page 21 of your agenda. Mattamy Joshua Creek Limited Phase 3 has submitted a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment applications to permit the development of 1,031 residential units, 2 neighborhood parks, a separate elementary school, 2 village squares, and natural heritage system on approximately 60 hectares of land. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to introduce the application to Council and to the public and to obtain any further comments as related to this application. The report will be received and no recommendations on the application are being made at this time. Next slide, please. The property is generally located on the south side of Burtethorpe Road east and west of 9th Line. The legal description of the property is part of lots 8 and 9, concession 1 north of Dundas Street. The subject lands are currently located north of Dunoak and the Argol subdivision. A vehicular access to the subdivision would be coordinated through the abutting Dunoak, Argol, and Bressa subdivisions. The lands are generally flat and were previously used for agricultural purposes, and the site is currently vacant. Next slide, please. This is a context slide. The subject lands are outlined in red, and to the south is the Dunoak LPAT draft approved plan of subdivision consisting of 2-story detached dwellings and townhouses, a Dundas urban core block, school block, and stormwater management pond. To the south and east of the subject lands is the Argol Joshua Creek draft plan of subdivision, which is currently under review. This application consists of 2-story detached dwellings and townhouse units, a park to be developed in conjunction with the park within this subdivision, a mixed-use block, stormwater management pond, and Dundas urban core. To the north and west of these lands are vacant lands which are designated for future residential uses but are not currently subject to the development application. Next slide, please. In terms of the proposal, again, it relates to the redevelopment of approximately 60 hectares of land. The applicant is proposing 1,031 residential units, 2 neighborhood parks, a separate elementary school, 2 village squares, and the natural heritage system. In terms of the breakdown of the units, the applicant is proposing 687 detached dwellings, 15 rear lane detached units, 317 street townhouse units, and 12 live-work units. A condition of approval would require the conveyance of the natural heritage system. The proposed zoning would facilitate the development of these lands. Next slide, please. The North Oakville East Secondary Plan designates the subject property as neighborhood area, neighborhood park, elementary school site, natural heritage system, an avenue transit corridor, and connector transit corridor. The North Oakville Master Plan is intended to assist in providing guidance and coordination of local roads and adjacent land uses to the North Oakville planning area. Development applications are reviewed to ensure general coordination and consistency with the intent of the master plan. Minor modifications are permitted, provided the general intent and direction of the master plan is maintained. The North Oakville Master Plan further identifies these lands as natural heritage system, general urban area, suburban area, neighborhood center area, neighborhood park, elementary school, and village square. Next slide, please. The subject lands are currently zoned existing development ED as illustrated on the left side of your screen. The existing development zone only allows uses that legally existed on the date of the parent bylaw came into effect. On the right-hand side of the screen is the applicant proposed bylaw. The site-specific zoning bylaw would rezone the lands from ED to natural heritage system, park, and site-specific general urban, suburban, neighborhood center area, and institutional zones. The applicant's proposed zoning regulations can be found within Appendix A of tonight's staff report. Next slide, please. The applicant hosted a public information meeting on February 11th, 2020. One member of the public attended, as well as the Ward 6 councillors. The resident inquired about timing and availability of units and the location of the natural heritage trail systems. Minutes from the meeting can be found at Appendix C of tonight's staff report. No written submissions have been received to date. Next slide, please. This slide reflects the various matters identified by staff to date. The future recommendation will address these, including the confirmation that the applicant is a member in good standing with the North Oakville East Developers Group, consistency with the provincial policy statement, conformity to the growth plan, regional official plan, and the North Oakville East Secondary Plan, coordination of the draft plan with the environmental impact study to the satisfaction of Conservation Halton, the region, and the town. Confirmation and conformity with the urban design policies on matters such as built form, lot size, transitions, and compatibility with adjacent properties, interface with the public realm, and vehicular access. Review of opportunities to provide on-street parking and investigate opportunities to maximize visitor parking. Review of alignment of Street B to protect for an appropriate connection between Dundas Street East and Burnthorpe Road East in accordance with the master plan and the road network. Next slide. The recommendation report will also ensure that the approval of this draft plan of subdivision does not restrict the municipality's ability to provide an east-west connection across the town as anticipated in figures NOE2 and NOE4. Consideration of the need for additional rear lane townhouse units along streets B and L to reduce the number of driveways and maximize additional on-street parking opportunities. Confirmation of appropriate road and lane widths to ensure functionality. The Northeast Secondary Plan and Master Plan also anticipates 3 village squares within the subject lands, however, 2 are only being proposed. Confirmation will be received from the region that the applicant has secured sufficient allocation to allow for the full build-out of the subdivision. And any other issues are identified this evening by the public and council. Next slide, please. In conclusion, staff put forth the following recommendation for council's consideration. Staff will be returning to council with a recommendation at a future planning and development meeting. However, no date has been determined. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Musson. We have a hand already. Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to our staff for the presentation and the report. Councillor Lischina and I met with staff earlier to discuss this application, and so I've compiled a number of questions that I hope will cover off concerns that the two of us together have raised. And so I'll go through them. Some of them have been caught partially, I think, by staff's set of recommendations, but the first is the appropriate configuration of the Street A that heads off to the northwest, and whether it's an appropriate configuration to allow for the proper development of the adjacent properties. Similarly, the second issue is whether the curve associated with Street B heading to the northeast is appropriate to allow for the proper development of the adjacent properties, and in particular, whether the requirement that it creates of an intersection with a higher volume traffic is appropriate or not. Third item was touched on, but the question is, does the application include a sufficient number of and sufficient size of parks for the subdivision? The fourth item is whether the activity node is appropriately designed to allow for other than residential uses. So one of those, there ought to be some kind of commercial activity there. There ought to be the ability to have a daycare operation outside of the school property. I think we'll all agree that we've seen a lot of schools that don't have daycares available within them, and so I don't think we have any expectation that that school site would have a daycare open to the general public. The fifth is with respect to the village square area in the middle of the design, whether the streets are appropriately designed for pedestrian traffic, and whether the streets ought to be redesigned. And in particular, I'm looking at whether there ought to be a connecting point between Street N and Street M, for example. And my last issue is whether there is a lack of connectivity between the streets, particularly between Street B and the street to the west of it. In the master plan, there's an extra connection between those two streets, and that connection has been cut off by a very long particular section of blocks of townhomes. So those are the issues that I wanted to bring forward. I wonder if our staff have any comments at this time on any of those, or if they are willing to bring a report back dealing with those.
Well, Councillor, I think the first question I would ask our planning director is if he was able to catch them all.
Through your worship, I missed the second point, Councillor.
Oh, very good. And I'm sorry if I would like to know if my speaker or my mic is not working.
You're being heard perfectly well.
Oh, good.
I noted that your second question was asking about the curve of Street B. Perhaps you could amplify that for the planning director.
Very good. So at the north end of Street B, where it enters into the subdivision that will eventually be to the north, this design on page 23 or page 3 of the report shows that street curving over to the east and resulting in a place where there'd be an intersection and traffic would have to stop and make a left-hand turn. The original design had that street going straight through, which would allow for more continuous traffic. And given that Street B is likely to carry significant volumes of traffic, I'm concerned that that's an inappropriate traffic street design.
I can see that he got it this time. Thank you, Councillor,
Perfect.
for repeating it. Are there any other, Councillor Palmer? And then Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks to staff for the report, and to Councillor Adams and Lischina for their questions. I just have a follow-up question on the school in the area. I wanted to confirm, I understand that the Halton District School Board recently put forward their capital priorities list, and that the public school was not granted by the province, and I'm wondering if this is the public school that was on the list.
For your worship, to the councillor, this is a Catholic elementary school. And I had discussions with them earlier late last week, and they're anticipating this one to be open in 2025, 2026. However, that's subject to funding, acquisition, and any municipal approvals that they would require.
And then, so my other question or comment would just be I know most of the school boards do their projections of the students that they can reach capacity at their schools with. So I would just I would like to know if this new population was considered in their forecasts.
This
information has been shared with the school board. Thank you.
So did you catch the answer from Ms. Musson? Ms. Musson, maybe you could just go into that a little bit more so that the public will understand the degree of coordination between the planning departments of the town and the school boards.
Through your worship, when a secondary plan is created, it looks at, in conjunction with the school board, the population that is anticipated in an area, and they base the number of schools on that population. In some cases, when population numbers and number of units aren't being reached, then not all school sites are required. And then school boards have an opportunity, if they don't want to acquire the school, then they wouldn't. In this case, it's my understanding that the separated Catholic school board still wants this school site. I can reach out to the school board, though, and confirm that they still agree or feel that there's a population to justify that school.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grant, I believe you're next.
Thank you to Councillor Adams for his great questions. So I'm going to put mine under the category of chasing windmills. I know that our staff does a great job at looking to get people in the area to try and contribute questions about development, but I'm finding more and more as we develop north of Dundas, and perhaps my fellow councillors in Ward 5 and 6 feel the same or see the same, but I'm getting more and more people asking about what's going on and wanting to respond to new developments going on. And I'm wondering if there is a way that as we continue with this process, not just based on this one development, but on the other ones as well, including the one that we discussed the last time we were at P&D, if we can start trying to find ways other than just the Oakville Beaver, or even the website, finding a way to connect with people who live in the area south of these developments to be able to contribute or respond. We've had no responses to this one development because, again, there's nobody living around there. But the people who live south of these areas do feel the impacts or will feel the impacts in the future. So, again, chasing windmills, I'm asking the question, is there something we can do perhaps or consider as we go forward to see that we can try and include a larger group of people, a larger cachet, when we start discussing these developments? And that's my comment.
So something besides the ads that we run in the newspaper, I guess is what I'm hearing you say. And we'll certainly look into that. Next we have is Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Through Mayor Burton. It's back to the schools again. I noticed this site is 2.4 hectares. And I just want to make sure that we don't give a developer's free pass like we did for the Saw Wet development, where the developer already has pre-approval for 45 single houses on that property if in fact the school is not built within a specific time frame. Would we ever be doing that here? Because on that one, they don't even have to come back to council.
Mr. Planning Director, can you help the councillor?
Your worship, I'm going to defer that one to Lee. I don't have an answer for you.
Okay. Ms. Musson, you get the question.
The proposed zoning on this site is I, which is institutional, which wouldn't permit residential development. So if the school board decides in the future that they don't want the site and the developer still owns the lands, and they would have to come forward with a rezoning. And it would be
Okay.
another opportunity for the public to chime in.
So that is much better than what happened with Saw Wet then, where we gave them a carte blanche to build 45 houses.
Through your worship, I'm not familiar with the situation in Saw Wet, but the way this would be, site would be zoned, it would be zoned institutional, which wouldn't permit residential.
Which is what we have in the Saw Wet, except they also have it as an escape clause that if it's not built within, if the school board doesn't buy it within 7 years, they get to throw down 45 houses. So I just hope never to see that again. I appreciate that. Next one is page 38, parks and trails. It looks like we're going to build the trails and then in the future, we'll get some money from the developer. I'm just wondering, how does that, like in the future, like how many years do we have to wait for that?
Sorry, your worship, which page of the staff report? I don't have the agenda in front of me. I just have the staff report.
Oh, it's page 38. Maybe somebody can help you. It says the parks and trails may result in work that would be done on behalf of the town and reimbursed in a future year.
Page 18.
Thank you, your worship. So that's the financial section of the staff reports, which comes from our financial staff. I may defer the comment to the Director of Planning.
Thank you.
Through your worship to the councillor, I'll have to take that back and report back when we bring the report back to council.
Okay, I appreciate that. On page 49 at 7.3.5, the natural heritage and open space system. I just know the wording, and I just want to get confirmation. I'll read the sentence that the natural heritage and open space system for North Oakville East is part of a larger system which is intended to extend through all of North Oakville. The word is intended. Is that what we're really saying? It's just intended? I thought this was already done through our official plan. Has there been some change that I'm not aware of?
Through your worship, there's no change from the development of the official plan when it was first created.
So it's not just intended anymore. Then it will extend. Is that what should be said?
The trail system has been determined, and there's a plan that sets out where the trails are going to be located north of Dundas, and there hasn't been a change to that.
Okay, so yeah, so maybe it's just that it will extend through all of North Oakville. Okay, got it. It was when I saw is intended, these words start to scare me. So appreciate that. Thanks for the confirmation on that. Thank you. That's all my questions. So we'll get the answers, I'm sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
It's a general question because in the agenda report, it talks about staff would be talking to them about relative to the climate emergency. And my recollection is Mattamy was very actively involved in the community energy plan. Do we know anything that's going to be done in this proposal that takes some of that learning and commitment to the community energy plan and puts it into action?
Through your worship, that is something I can speak more with Mattamy. They're on the line this evening, so they're hearing the question. So that is something I can report back to you.
And thank you for that very much. And my other question is just around the overall look and feel of Dundas and how things butt up against Dundas. We've asked several times if we could get a visual of how the street is now developing. It's just helpful at these public meetings to be able to see how things are going to be visualized. And I get that there's modifications, et cetera, that are discussed and hopefully improvements made. But I'm wondering, is that something maybe Director Simeone can speak to? Will we be able to get that going forward?
We do have the opportunity to model the buildings that are proposed in these developments. We have internal staff capability to do that. In addition, we could receive plans from the developers. So we'll take that away and perhaps have when you see this again, we might be able to give you that visual that you're looking for.
Thank you very much. My last question is more of a thank you to Councillor Adams and Lischena, because I really do think that the question about the lack of commercial use in the daycare is really, we talked a lot at the last P&D about complete communities and about walk to, and if the schools are not going to be providing a daycare, we need to make sure we've protected some form of commercial use for families, the need that the families are going to have. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Anyone else? Madam Clerk, are there any delegations phoning in? All right, Council, there are none. I think maybe we can turn to the Planning Director and hear what you've added to the issue list. Mr. Planning Director.
Thank you, Your Worship, to Council. So investigate the appropriateness of the configuration of proposed Street A. Does the application include sufficient numbers and sizes of parks? Is the activity node the appropriate size to allow for other than residential uses? Is the street appropriately designed for pedestrian traffic in the village square? Is a lack of connectivity between Street B and the lands to the east? Is there a lack of connectivity between Street B and the lands to the east or west of it? The north end of Street B, where it enters to the north, shows a curve to the east, resulting in an intersection and left-hand turn situation. Staff to review the appropriateness of this street design. Has the population from this subdivision been shared with the school board to justify a proposed Catholic school? What can be done to notify more residents of these types of applications? This one I'm not too clear on. How long will it take for the town to pay back the developer for the parks and trails that they will be constructing? And can staff prepare a visual of how this development will look at full build-out?
I think that about captures it. If you agree.
I think it missed my point about that they don't have the school that they can pre-build houses without going back. I want to make sure that's not in there, and there's no time limit.
Ms. Musson already told you that it's not in there, but sure, the Planning Director will accommodate you by repeating it.
I appreciate that.
Councillor Palmer.
Hi, I wanted to clarify my ask. It's not to justify the ask for a school in that subdivision. It's to ensure that they have the population projections for the current schools, since a lot of them are experiencing overcrowding. That was my ask.
Thank you very much for clarifying that.
Thank you.
I can tell you that in my meetings with the education directors, they tell me that they're fully aware, that we share this information and that they get it as a matter of course. So, but I suppose belt and suspenders, nothing wrong with triple checking. All right, if we've captured everybody, could we get a motion for the recommended, the staff recommendation, including these new issues? Councillor Adams, I think I saw your hand. Any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there's no objection and the motion carries. Thank you, everybody. We have no discussion items or confidential discussion items, and there are no advisory committee minutes this evening. And it is time to rise and report to council. Could we have a motion to rise and report? Councillor O'Meara, thank you for that. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there is no objection. The motion carries. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 1, 2, and 3, and public hearing item 4 as noted by the clerk. Could I have a mover and seconder for the report? Councillor Palmer and Councillor Lischena, thank you very much. Any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there's no objection. The report is adopted. Is there any new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? Councillor Grant.
Well, I think we need to congratulate the fire department in the town of Oakville for the wonderful Christmas light display we had this weekend and toy drive. They did a great job, and apparently caught a lot of toys and did a great job. So unfortunately, I couldn't make it there myself. I know that there are other counselors who did, so maybe they can talk about their experience doing that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Grant. I can tell you that it was one of the more fun ways that I've found that you can get cold at night. And the joy on the faces of the kids and the parents was very heartwarming. So thank you for calling attention to that. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. I'd be remiss not to acknowledge Councillor Duddick and her leadership with respect to the Santa Claus Parade and how we coordinated with the town and also with the firefighters to make a very wonderful evening. I'm probably suspect that this is going to be an annual event sometime every year, and to all who were involved with it, it went off very smoothly. It was an excellent event, and so my congratulations to the Santa Claus Parade Committee and to the leadership of Councillor Duddick.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chisholm. That's very well said. Councillor Knoll.
I just wanted to add, we're thanking everybody that's involved with that fantastic event, and I enjoy being there and getting chilly with Councillors Lischina, Chisholm, who else was there? Robertson, as well as our federal colleague, MP Demoff. But I also want to say a big thank you to the Parks and Open Space team and Recreation team, because in addition to the fire department, they took on the Herculean task of actually organizing a lot of the activity, and it was executed with military precision. And I want to echo the comment that you made, Your Worship, that it likely will be an annual event. It shouldn't go to likely; it should actually be. We should absolutely make it an annual event. It was fantastic. It really with spirit in these COVID days, and I also want to say thank you to everybody that had any part of this. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just point out this event is an annual and goes back many generations. It's an annual event of the Oakville Professional Firefighters Association, and they're immune to our orders. So that's why when I was talking to them at the event, I was saying, gee, let's talk about maybe making it permanent. And they said, we'll get back to you. So, so let's wait and see how that develops. I know that their dedication to needy kids and toys at Christmas time is it's unparalleled. So I'm sure they'll do the right thing, and we'll just have to wait and see. Everything one step at a time. All right, I wonder if we are now ready for the consideration and reading of the bylaws. If we are, I need two hands. Councillor Duddick and Councillor Longo, thank you. This is for consideration and reading of the bylaws as listed in the agenda. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there is no objection. The bylaws are adopted. And we've now reached the end of our work for this evening. And you've done very well. Thank you very much for your time and attention. It's terrific working with you, and the meeting is over.